beautiful tree or what? Oh, yes. These are wonderful maple trees at the Jijak Center Campground, where we're at an Intertribal Food Summit. We're looking at their sapping operation and some of the things they do. Number one, they take their trees. That's 351. And then here's the tap that went in there. And we'll follow that down here. There's an intersection right there. They've dropped their line on the ground for the year. There's another one over here. Over here, let's see if this is 350 or 352. Yep, that's tree number 350. And we'll take a scan of this hill here, which is nice. They've got this gravity system, and they got maybe, there's another line coming down there. And this is following these trees down here. We're gonna go down here, take a look at this fun stuff. When you're out in the woods, you begin noticing these things, like, okay, here's a vine, and there it goes, up the tree. That doesn't have much to do with sapping, it's just some unique thing, and you can ask questions about what kind of vine, what did they use that for, making rope. And we find maple tree in Enotikaka 349 on tour at Jijak 2000. Okay, so here's the intersection that brings these together, and there's the line going up. There's your first tree, tree number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on that line. And if we go over here and follow this line up, there's number 1, 2, 3, and 4 at least. I don't see any more up there on this line, but there could be, but at least 4. So that's 11 on what is a gravity drop line. There are no cables hanging this. This is running downhill into the valley, and we'll follow it down there a little ways. There's your sugar shack. See where it ends up. Down on the ground there is 1, 2, 3 lines that come down there so far, and you got your trail leading back up to the sugar shack where they're hauling their sap for boiling, and that's beautiful, and we'll get some footage of that in a little bit. And then the trail down here. We're gonna roam down here and see what else we have here. I see a couple other lines coming down, and it's got a nice embankment here. So beautiful place to be collecting sap. And then you look down in here, and I'm not sure what these plants are. We saw some wild onions earlier, but everything's beginning to break out of here, and we got some nice lines down here. All gravity. You don't need your suction pump out here. On the one they had 11, and you know, usually they're telling you you don't want to put too many more than that on there, I think, sometimes. Now here, see, what you can tell here is you've got a line coming down here, came down to a tank, and you got you got a tag. This is tree number 355, and it's got 2 tubing taps on it. There you go. Right alongside it, and there's another line coming down that goes up this hill, and I can see a couple tags on trees already. You don't want to get too many on it, but it's got a nice gravity drop. Here's a third line, probably all that came into the same tank down here. So strategically, that's nice. You got one big tank collection site, you got 3 lines coming down, and every day you pick up your 30 or 40 gallons of sap. You see they got lots of moisture running down into the bottoms here, because here's where it's collecting. These, I do not believe, we'll find out what kind of plants these are. Like I said, there were clearly some wild onions not too far up here that we saw so far. So on our walk through the
our sugar house, and one of the things that in our process of learning sugaring, we spent a lot of time going back and reading and learning. I mean, lots and lots, and I have probably 7 big folders full of research on traditional sugaring. I mean, outstanding, just a huge amount of material that we went through, as well as talking to as many people as we could talk to, and learning both about traditional knowledge as well as the science, biology, kind of like, I'm going to say there's Anishinaabe science and then there's Western science. And I think that's a really important thing to understand, is that Western culture likes to think that it is own science. Like, only Western culture has science. Everything else is folklore. And that's just total garbage, because every culture has its scientific knowledge and the parameters of defining science and scientific terminology. And in Anishinaabe, there's incredible amounts of scientific understanding and terminology, which has a totally different perspective than a Western perspective. But in doing all that research, one of the things that we found was that historically in this area, most of the communities had sugar houses. They had sugar houses, and those sugar houses were made out of bark. They're bark covered, and those sugar bushes take place at the same place every year, year after year. The same extended families would go back to their sugar house, and oftentimes they would just have the frame, and they would cover that frame with cattail mats or wigwasi pukway on the birch bark rolls, and then they have a big cook frame on the inside. And so one of the things we really wanted to do was to have a sugar house, and there was a lot of conversation to think about the design of this sugar house, and the decisions made and how it was built. There's a lot of decisions, and one of the thoughts was that because sugar bush is such a spiritual thing, you know, that life-giving in the spring, the giving of the maple sap, all of this beauty that comes in, that this had to be like, we wanted this to be like a church. When you walk in, it's a place that draws people. We also wanted something that was going to last for a long time. We didn't want something that we were going to build and was going to go away. We wanted 7 generations. And I remember the conversation we had about this was that maybe 2 generations from now, people would forget. You know, it's possible. You know, we sugar now, and then everyone has kids, and then their kids, and then it stops happening. It's happened before. You know, like I said, it wasn't since the 60s since people sugared. Here, if that happens, this sugar house is still going to be here, and there's going to be somebody who walks by, some young person, and they're going to go, oh look, they sugared, they made maple sugar, let's figure it out, let's try to do it, and people will do it again. The other thing about this sugar house is we had our own folks here build this. We cut every log, and it's made out of our ash trees from the property. So those emerald ash borers have been killing all these trees down here, and that's a really sad thing. But to be able to use those trees to be able to make the sugar house so that we can still make maple sugar, that's a really, really good thing. So that was part of our approach on this as well.
The big tanks out here, and then we have a lift pump lifts it into here, and then from there it flows down right into the wood-fired evaporator. This back pan is kicking off about 100 gallons worth of sap an hour when it's at full run, if the humidity's right. And that's just barreling steam up. By the time it makes it to here, it's close to syrup. And so it'll work its way through here until it gets the draw off on the end. And obviously this is all disassembled now for the season. But whatever we set this at is what the syrup is finishing at that current time of the day. And it can change within a day with relative humidity. So that's the temperature, and it'll open, the valve will open on it, and it will pour off until it drops 1/10 of a degree difference. And that's, boom. So it pours off at finished syrup. And then from there, you know, we filter it and we bottle it, or we bring it into a,
You were drawing it off of here, what, just to kind of double check things with your hydrometer? You said if
yeah,
you're
because
gonna
that's
draw
what we
some
do.
off?
When we keep checking every 1/10 of a degree until we bricks with a hydrometer,
Right.
you know, at 66, and then we're there, and that's the temp we set it at.
And you're calibrating it when 218, most people say 219. Why wouldn't it say 219 on a draw off?
Because it's between 215 and 220. It'll vary. It can be as low as 215 and as high as 220. It depends on the barometric pressure and the relative humidity. So on a day when, I don't know if you noticed this, but when you're evaporating and it gets to be evening and the sun sets and suddenly all that pressure changes in the air, your steam is like not coming off the same way. And this will actually draw off at a higher temperature during that time because it has to do with the cooling of the air and the air pressure coming down. So you have an immediate change at sunset, and then from there it'll readjust.
Or when a storm rolls in?
Yeah, and that's why like the old folks always said you can make syrup. You know, you can boil in the storm, but you don't ever make sugar in the storm because you can't making your finished sugar.
You're not going to know for sure when it's finished because you've got these wild changes in the
got
barometric
it.
pressure.
And because that moisture that's in the air, when you're talking about tiny little bits, you're taking up to 255 or whatever, 155 degrees, you're cooking every last bit of moisture out. It's liquid because it's just liquid sugar. There's no water left. And it's hot. And you can't, with that moisture hanging in the air, you can't push that last little bit out. On a day that's nice and dry, I can do start to finish in 20 minutes, 2 gallons into sugar. But on a rainy day, you're looking at, I don't know, maybe Blandford one time. Were you there?
No, but I remember.
It's just not going to...
But it was I started it up at 8:30 in the morning, a batch of 2 gallons, and we pulled off at almost 4 o'clock.
We were doing some at the National Lake Shore, and I put it back on the fire 3 times. It was raining, it was drizzling.
Yeah, you can't get that moisture out of it. And the other thing about sugar too that a lot of people don't realize is that the sugar's invert. So what happens is early in the season, your sugars are very simple sugars as they're coming out of the tree. But the longer those are exposed to warmth, especially, then the more they begin to convert over into other sugars.
Into like fructose or
Exactly.
sucrose or something
You can
versus...
actually